The Philadelphia experiment is a series of secret military projects which took place in 1943 in the Philadelphia Shipyard.
What if we tell you that everything you think you know about the Philadelphia experiment is wrong? In October 1943, the United States Navy allegedly made an entire warship vanish into thin air. Sailors were fused into the metal hull of the ship. Men burst into flames that burned for 18 days straight. Some went completely insane. Others simply walked through walls and were never seen again. This is the story of America's most disturbing military experiment, and the truth behind it is even stranger than you could possibly imagine. The nightmare in the shipyard. It was the height of World War II. Nazi submarines were terrorizing the Atlantic Ocean, sinking Allied ships at an alarming rate. The United States Navy was desperate for any advantage, and according to the legend, they found one. The USS Eldridge was a brand new Cannon-class destroyer escort, commissioned on August 27, 1943. She was 306 feet long, displaced over 1,200 tons, and carried a crew of 186 men. But what happened to those men would become one of the most horrifying stories in American military history. The story goes like this. On October the 28th, 1943, the Navy conducted a top-secret experiment at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. They were allegedly trying to make the Eldridge invisible to enemy radar using principles from Albert Einstein's unified field theory. But something went terribly, terribly wrong. Witnesses reported seeing the ship surrounded by a strange greenish-blue haze. Then came a blinding flash of blue light, and when that light faded, the USS Eldridge was gone. Not just invisible to radar, completely invisible to the human eye. The ship had vanished from Philadelphia Harbor. But here is where the story takes a truly nightmarish turn. The Eldridge did not just disappear. According to eyewitnesses over 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, the ship materialized out of nowhere in their harbor. It sat there for several minutes before vanishing again and reappearing back in Philadelphia. The Navy had accidentally invented teleportation, and the cost was beyond imagination. When Navy officials boarded the ship after the experiment, they found a scene straight out of a horror movie. Some sailors had been fused directly into the metal structure of the ship itself. Their bodies were embedded in the steel deck and bulkheads, with limbs sticking out at impossible angles. One man was found with his hand permanently merged into the hull. Others had railings passing straight through their torsos. They were dying or already dead, their flesh mixed with metal in ways that defied all understanding of physics. 2 crew members caught fire while carrying ordinary compasses. But these were not normal flames. According to the accounts, the fires burned for 18 days straight and could not be extinguished by any means. The survivors, who were not physically damaged, suffered a different fate. They went insane. Dozens of men were reportedly discharged as mentally unfit for duty. Some began phasing in and out of visibility, becoming transparent at random moments for the rest of their lives. One sailor allegedly walked through the wall of his home in front of his wife and children and was never seen again. And then there was something the survivors called the deep freeze. Crew members would suddenly become locked in place, unable to move, stuck in a coma-like state. They could remain frozen for hours, days, or even months. Only other survivors of the experiment could see them. To everyone else, they were completely invisible. The first victim of the deep freeze took 6 months and $5 million worth of electronic equipment to unfreeze. When he finally came out of it, he was completely and irreversibly insane. But what if we told you that the most disturbing part of this story is not what allegedly happened on that ship? What if the real nightmare is how this entire legend was created by a single mentally ill man writing letters from a Pennsylvania farmhouse? The man who invented a conspiracy. Every single claim about the Philadelphia experiment traces back to one man. His name was Carl Meredith Allen, though he preferred to call himself Carlos Miguel Allende. and his story is almost as strange as the myth he created. Carl Allen was born on May 31st, 1925, in Springdale, Pennsylvania. He dropped out of school at the age of 9. He joined the Marine Corps in July 1942, but was discharged after less than a year. Then he joined the Merchant Marine, where he served aboard a supply ship called the SS Andrew Furuseth from August 1943 to January 1944. This is where the story gets interesting. Allen would later claim that, while aboard the Andrew Furuseth, he personally witnessed the Philadelphia experiment happen. He said he watched the USS Eldridge vanish and reappear from the deck of his ship. But Allen's family had a very different perspective on him. According to investigative journalist Robert Gorman, who tracked Allen down in 1980 for Fate magazine, the family described Carl as brilliant, but also as a master leg puller who loved to play games with anyone foolish enough to believe him. Gorman was actually a family friend. He confirmed that Allen had an established history of psychiatric illness and had never been able to hold a job for very long. In 1955, Allen read a book by an astronomer named Morris K. Jessup called The Case for the UFO. The book argued that the government should research anti-gravity technology and unified field theory for use in spacecraft. Something about this book triggered Allen. He became obsessed. He bought a copy of the book and filled it with strange, handwritten annotations. He used 3 different colors of ink to make it look like 3 different people were writing notes in the margins. These annotations were rambling, cryptic, and filled with random capitalization. They hinted at secret knowledge about alien civilizations and government cover-ups. Then Allen did something that would change everything. He mailed this annotated copy of the book to the Office of Naval Research in Washington, D.C. The package was marked with the words, "Happy Easter." Starting in January 1956, Allen also began sending letters directly to Morris Jessup. In these letters, he claimed to be an eyewitness to the Philadelphia experiment. He described in vivid detail everything that allegedly happened: the greenish haze, the teleportation, the sailors fused into the ship. But there was a problem. Allen could never provide any evidence. When Jessup asked for proof, Allen replied that his memories would need to be recovered through something called narco-hypnosis. He claimed that Albert Einstein had personally tutored him in physics for several weeks. This was an absurd claim considering Einstein's busy schedule and Allen's lack of any formal education past the 4th grade. So why did anyone believe this man? The answer involves 2 Navy officers, a mysterious document called the Varro edition, and a death that some believe was not a suicide at all. The Varro edition and the death of Morris Jessup. When that strange annotated book arrived at the Office of Naval Research, something unexpected happened. 2 officers became genuinely interested. Their names were Captain Sidney Sherby and Commander George W. Hoover. Now, before you start thinking this proves the government was covering something up, let me explain what was actually going on. In the 1950s, the UFO craze was sweeping America. Even many scientists and engineers had not made up their minds about whether UFOs were real. According to Jack G. Smith, a former ONR official who spoke about this in 1979, many people at the Office of Naval Research were interested in UFOs as basically a lunchtime hobby. Sherby and Hoover showed the annotated book to Morris Jessup, who immediately recognized the handwriting from the letters Allen had been sending him. Jessup was not impressed, but the officers remained curious. In 1957, they arranged for a small printing of the annotated book through a military contractor called Varro Manufacturing Corporation. Approximately 127 mimeographed copies were produced, with Allen's letters included as an appendix. This became known as the Varro edition. And then on April 20th, 1959, Morris Jessup was found dead. His body was discovered in his station wagon in Dade County, Florida, at a place called Matheson Hammock Park. A hose ran from the exhaust pipe to the inside of the car. The official ruling was suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. Conspiracy theorists immediately claimed this was murder. They said the government silenced Jessup because he knew too much about the Philadelphia experiment. This theory has persisted for decades, but the reality is far more tragic and far more ordinary. By 1959, Morris Jessup's life had fallen apart. His follow-up books to The Case for the UFO had failed commercially. His publisher had rejected his recent manuscripts. His wife, Ruby, had left him in 1958. He was still recovering from a serious car accident that had left him in chronic pain. Friends reported that he had been talking about suicide for months. Just days before his death, he wrote what radio host Ivan Sanderson described as an outright suicide letter to Long John Nebel, a popular overnight radio personality. So, did the Philadelphia experiment actually happen? Let us look at what the evidence actually shows. The ship logs of the USS Eldridge are preserved on microfilm at the National Archives. These are official Navy records that document exactly where the ship was on every single day of its service. And according to those logs, the Eldridge was never in Philadelphia between August and December of 1943. After being commissioned in New York on August 27, 1943, the Eldridge remained in New York and Long Island Sound until September the 16th. Then it sailed to Bermuda for shakedown training. It returned to New York on October the 18th and stayed in New York Harbor until November 1st. On October 28, 1943, the supposed date of the experiment, the USS Eldridge was docked in New York. Not Philadelphia, but what about Carl Allen's claim that he witnessed the experiment from the deck of the SS Andrew Furuseth? The movement records for that ship are also in the National Archives. They show that the Andrew Furuseth left Norfolk with convoy UGS-22 on October the 25th, 1943. That is 3 days before the alleged experiment. The two ships were never in Norfolk at the same time. There is more. A letter from Lieutenant Junior Grade William S. Dodge, who was the master of the Andrew Furuseth in 1943, categorically denies that he or his crew observed any unusual event while in Norfolk. In April 1999, 15 Navy veterans who actually served aboard the USS Eldridge held a reunion in Atlantic City. They told the Philadelphia Inquirer that their ship had never made port in Philadelphia. Bill Van Allen, who served as executive officer and later captain from 1943 to 1944, stated that he did not have the slightest idea how these stories got started. Former crew member Ed Wise called the whole thing somebody's pipe dream. The Office of Naval Research has issued official denials multiple times. Their September 1996 statement was unambiguous. It said that ONR has never conducted any investigations on invisibility, either in 1943 or at any other time. It noted that ONR was not even established until 1946, 3 years after the alleged experiment. The statement concluded that in view of present scientific knowledge, ONR scientists do not believe that such an experiment could be possible except in the realm of science fiction. And what about Carl Allen himself? In 1969, he admitted to Jim Lorenzen of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization that his annotations and letters were fabricated to scare the hell out of Jessup. He later retracted this confession, then confirmed it again in a letter to his parents dated March 30, 1978. In that letter, he admitted that he wrote the annotated book alone by himself with no Mr. A or Mr. B. But if the evidence against the Philadelphia experiment is so overwhelming, why do millions of people still believe it happened? The answer lies in real, secret experiments, a charismatic conman, and the power of Hollywood. The Time Traveler and the Montauk Connection. The Philadelphia experiment might have faded into obscurity after Robert Gurman exposed Carl Allen in 1980. But then something happened in 1984 that changed everything. A movie. The Philadelphia Experiment, directed by Stuart Raffill and starring Michael Pear and Nancy Allen, was made for $9 million and became a cult classic. John Carpenter, the legendary horror director, wrote the original draft and served as executive producer. The Navy refused to cooperate with the production, stating that they felt a movie of this nature would perpetuate the myth. They were right. The film portrayed two 1943 sailors who are thrown forward in time to 1984 when a radar invisibility experiment goes wrong. It brought the story to millions of people who had never heard of Carl Allen or Morris Jessup. And it inspired a man named Al Bielek to come forward with an extraordinary claim. In 1988, 4 years after the movie came out, Bielek announced that he had watched the film and experienced overwhelming déjà vu that triggered repressed memories. He claimed that his real name was Edward Cameron, that he had been aboard the USS Eldridge during the experiment, and that he and his brother Duncan had jumped from the ship and travelled through time to 1983. But Bielek did not stop there. He claimed that at Camp Hero on Long Island, the site of the old Montauk Air Force Station, he and his brother met the physicist John von Neumann. This was a curious claim, considering that von Neumann had officially died in 1957. Bielek later added that he had also travelled to the years 2137 and 2749, where he observed future civilizations ruled by artificial intelligence. According to Bielek, government scientists had then age-regressed him and given him a completely new identity. He had lived his whole life without knowing who he really was until that movie theatre experience unlocked his buried memories. Extensive investigation by researchers proved that Bielek's claims were fabrications. The National Archives found no records of anyone named Edward or Duncan Cameron serving in the Navy. A photograph that Bielek claimed showed Edward Cameron was actually a picture of someone named Alexander Cameron III that had been mislabeled on his website. Bielek himself never provided any proof of military service. But Bielek's stories merged with another conspiracy theory called the Montauk Project, which claimed that time travel and mind control experiments took place at Camp Hero throughout the 1970s and 1980s. This mythology originated with Preston Nichols's 1992 book, The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time. Nichols himself acknowledged that his book might be science fiction or non-fiction and admitted the facts were soft. Camp Hero was a real World War II coastal defense station that became an Air Force radar facility during the Cold War. It closed in 1981 and is now a state park open to the public. The massive Sage radar tower still stands there, providing an evocative backdrop for anyone who wants to believe in secret government experiments. So what do you think? Was the Philadelphia experiment a complete hoax? Or is there still something the government is not telling us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.